Time for Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast from the Spacebook for the Fandom podcast network. Here we are shuffling and rustling around out in the time and space continuum, sort of waiting and watching, scrolling and rolling over as much of the Whoniverse as possible, the past, the present, and now and again the future. Here on your free speaking, big thinking show, 15 incarnations of the Doctor across all those decades, 61 years and counting. In fact, whenever, wherever, and however you started your journey with the Doctor, whatever Doctor it was, we know you'll get something out of each and every trip. This time we're recording live with a panel of our regular voices from across the podcasts and the platforms up there and out there, making time to take comments from fellow fans and companions on the Doctor Who stories currently in circulation as of time of recording. That's the 18th of February, 2025. So stop the press for Type 40. Hello, I'm Dan Hadley, Birmingham's King of the Geeks. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the show. I didn't expect to be here. I didn't expect to spend my evening here with you and with them now. But, you know, roll with it, go with it. Why not? It's a big old universe. There's lots happening up there, out there. And we're not ones for what you could call clickbait. I don't usually reach for kind of tabloid material, really, but sometimes things just hang around for that little bit too long, don't they? And they get caught. They get caught in the wind. That wasn't me. Not this time. Yes, so making content around Doctor Who, as with all of pop culture's sort of most storied and debated of properties, is a very curious experience. It can be seasonal, I think is the word, seasonal. And we've just gone through a dry spell and then a really silly season. But now the gloves really do seem to be off, don't they? And the tabloids have got in on the act. Facebook groups and X feeds, they are throbbing and pulsing with debate, aren't they? And people losing their S. In Doctor Who? Surely not. Yes, so speculation around Doctor Who, it's been escalating in recent weeks, culminating in one particular article, which has sort of set all of this off. And I thought I'd grab as many people as I possibly could for this impromptu live edition of the show to see what we make of it all, really, and see if we can get some of the levers on this thing working to give us some indication about where things may go next and where they may have gone wrong. If I can't figure it out, I think that Charlotte Shields probably can.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's almost like a big news story is breaking right now, isn't it, Dan?
News, but not news. When is news not news?
Yeah, it's news. It's not official. It's rumor talk. But when a lot of the papers start talking about it, that's when our ears tend to prick up at least.
Yeah. The DMs, they start to fill up, and the notifications, ping, 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 ping. So many of them. You know, I'm not one for sort of tabloid stories, Charlotte. Generally speaking, I do like to let the dust settle more often than not. But I don't know. Sometimes you've got to sort of go with your gut, haven't you? And you know what? I don't need an excuse to want to get together with yourself and some of our other friends too to catch up as well. It's been too long.
I think the thing is, Doctor Who's in a really odd spot right now. I think we've all said this in different streams or podcasts. And I think because there's so much uncertainty and there's so much of not knowing officially what the future is, then these sort of tabloid, like you said, stories sort of fill a void. And I think that's what we've been in a while, this void of no information, or official information anyway.
Yeah. All about this. Such an innocuous logo, a legendary diamond logo there. You know, when they brought this back, we hoped that they weren't going to disgrace it. Didn't go that well, really, in hindsight, did it?
No.
But if there is a void that needs filling, I know just the stout gentleman willing to... Oh, God. I think I'll just bring them in. Yes, so we have our friends here to make up the panel. we have real-life time traveler Matt Pott in his dungeon by the looks of things. We've got a podcast.
With my balls.
Steady on. Oh, okay.
My crystal ball. Yep, cancelled.
that was quick. We've got podcaster and pop culture pundit Joel Newelden back on the show as well.
Hello, something going on? What's happening today?
Well, maybe.
Any news?
Maybe could be. Yeah. I think we may be able to work it out.
Yeah, Mark Hamill's pants fell down.
Yeah. He did that deliberately to take the news off of this, didn't he?
He didn't. Yeah, he didn't tingle his balls, did he? Dave, I wouldn't put it past David Tennant. I think he'd do pretty much anything for a tenner. Sorry, Georgia. And making up the panel, finally, we've got, with an incredible hat, even better than John's, it's our retro doc mate, Gary Akers as well. Hello, Gary.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you, gents, and especially with Queen Charlotte. You can't tell, but
Gary,
you can't tell, but there's a giant invisible dog sitting on top of my hat.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to.
He's humping it.
Feed it every now and again. So if we see you reaching upwards with some treats, we'll know what's going on.
I'll be feeding it occasionally during the show.
We're laughing, everybody. We're laughing because if we weren't laughing, we may well be crying. Shh! What on earth? What on earth is going on now? And is Doctor Who R4? Is it on? Oh, heaven knows. I blame the tabloids. I blame the newspapers. I blame the Sun. Sun got a terrible reputation, or they used to have a terrible reputation. I'm not quite sure where it is now. But the British newspapers, Gary, have they got a bad reputation overseas?
The only time I ever hear about the Sun and the Express is in relation with Doctor Who articles, which are immediately said that they're tabloids and you can't believe them. That's the only time I hear about them.
I suppose that says it all, doesn't it? And how about you, Matt? Because you've got a robust media in the Southern Hemisphere as well, haven't you? In Australia and New Zealand and Tasmania. Yeah. All that area, you've got your own sort of versions of them, haven't you?
Absolutely, but they're quickly dying out, and we don't have them as I don't know if you'd say severe as the ones that they are in the UK, where they're just they try and be a little bit too sensational. We don't have them too sensational, although they do try occasionally, but it normally backfires badly.
I see. What if this will backfire? Heaven knows. Yes, it's blame the Sun. They used to have a really bad reputation, and there are entire regions of Britain where nobody will buy the Sun based on various stories that they've printed in the past and things that they've been a party to. I saw a copy of the Sun the other day. I was amazed to see that the cover price was £1.20, something like that. It's been that long since I bought a newspaper. I just don't read papers. I just don't read the newspapers anymore, John. I don't read a great deal of even the magazines that I used to read either. I really do cherry pick on stuff like SFX. The only thing I buy constantly is Doctor Who magazine, and up until recently, I wasn't reading much of that.
No, I'm like you. I don't buy papers anymore, but it's a shame because they're generally quite soft on the buttocks, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
I'd never looked at it that way, but everything's got its good points, hasn't it? Yes, and ready to get stuck into it with us. I know we've got some willing commenters there across YouTube, Rumble, and on X as well. So we'll get to you at various points in the show. We'll check in with whatever you're thinking about what we're thinking and saying, and we're going to throw out some information as well as revealed from our sources exclusively to us here at Type 40. So make sure you're around for all of that too. There's a lot to get stuck into. That's right after I remind you, if you'd like to do some real-time traveling of your own from the palm of your hand, each and every edition of Type 40, past, present, and future, is only a tap or two away. If you know where to look, there's a proper back-and-forth catalogue of reviews, previews, interviews, geek-outs, and deep dives with all our regular panelists and lots of awesome guests. Something for every fan, in fact, over at type40.com. livestream.com. Not only that, you can catch up with lots more incredible geeky conversations going on across the fabulous Fandom Podcast Network on our brother, sister, cousin, and other podcasts over there as well. Hit them with the good stuff right away. Don't overload them with too much information. That's how it works. Yes. Okay. So who have we got? Have we got all out? Yes, we've got John as well. So we're ready to roll, I think, and get into the meat of it. The last time, as you remind us, Gary, things haven't gone according to plan, have they? Doctor Who fans of late, things have burst into flames now and then, and people have been left, not best pleased with the results. You think, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then you hear more noises and see more headlines, and you think, oh, blimey, maybe I should have stayed home. I don't know. What do you think? I
was going to say it's so interesting that this dropped like 48 hours after we got the news of the return of a doctor that everybody loves, Chris Eccleston on Big Finish. So are the
everybody? Balanced? This is Doctor Who. Everybody.
Well, me.
It's very dangerous to bandy a word like everybody around in Doctor Who fandom, Gary. Yes, I was very pleased. I was very pleased as well. Doctor Who fandom, obviously, we are used to making our own amusement a great deal of the time, particularly when Doctor Who's not on, when it's not even filming, nothing seems to be happening. Even in the digital age, I think that the information sort of, we get used to it like a greater momentum to the way that it sort of churns around, aren't we? But Doctor Who's relationship with the media, with the press, it's I wouldn't say it's been distinguished over the last 60-odd years. Far from it, in fact. But it's sort of been a case of you scratch my back, I scratch yours. When the producers have been on their marks and in step with the press, it's been quite mutually beneficial, I think. But when the knives are out, it can be quite a different story, can't it? Because Doctor Who may be a pillar of British popular culture. As I said, just that diamond logo has been in existence for 50 years, never mind everything that came before. But it's only really as good as its last sort of match. And its current lead, too, Ncuti Gatwa's been in the main role now for a year and a half nearly. And he's yet to make any real mark with the British public. He's nowhere near a household name. In fact, I'd say that a lot of people would struggle to pick this bloke out of a bus queue, even with his various colours that he likes to dye his hair. The Sun have been all over Doctor Who in the last couple of days. They went to press digitally, certainly, with really quite a slim article. But it doesn't really need to be anything exhaustive to get Doctor Who fans talking, does it, Charlotte? 2 or 3 sentences is all it really takes. And when you preface something with the letters, with the words "exterminate" in giant letters, that's definitely going to get our attention, isn't it? So did you see this break? Did you see this turn up on social media? I would imagine that you saw it digitally rather than in print.
Well, I saw some people on Messenger basically send me either like different news sites covering it, and then I found the actual article. And I think as soon as you hear, like you said, exterminate and the words axe and cancellation, like they came very quickly.
All the trigger words are there, aren't they?
Yeah, like all the words which we don't want to hear as fans. Like it's
to be fair, Charlotte, just jumping in there quickly, apologies, but all of those words that popped up last night were more exciting than the series has been in quite a few years. So I was on the edge of my seat. That was proper behind the sofa stuff last night.
But I think the problem is, like you said, they doesn't need to have a lot of actual information in the story. I think if they've got enough quotes and they've got enough source information, as they refer to it, that's all really the fans want to see. Like, anybody can say an opinion piece about is Doctor Who cancelled, but the fact that in this case they appear, obviously we can never 100% prove this, but the fact that they've got multiple quotes from a source does make you go, actually, I'm going to look a bit more into this and actually maybe give it a little bit more attention at least.
Because this isn't somebody editorializing, is it, Matt? This is investigative journalism. My God, I'm going to use a small I and J because it is the Sun. But when you read the headline here, the byline, I should say, Doctor Who facing axe as lead star Ncuti Gatwa quits amid woeful rating and fans' fury at woke storylines. Ncuti's exit as the Time Lord would be the earliest exit of a Doctor, bar one exception. A writer called Rod McPhee has put his name to this, the TV editor of The Sun, originally published just 10 o'clock on Sunday, the 17th of February 2025. So that's really quite late at night. They work late. I'm sure they just make those dates up and times up to make it look like they're working. But yeah, everything's in there. We've got woke, we've got ratings, we've got woeful, we've got axe, we've got the whole works.
Got fury.
Yeah, fury. Absolute fury. I mean, this is a real pot boiler. It's all in there, so it's kind of difficult to decode it. At the end of the day, well, I think what they're picking up on, my instinct is, Matt, they're picking up on the fact that not just that the general public haven't taken to this incarnation of Doctor Who, because the ratings, they're not great. Even Russell T Davies has admitted they're not great, but they're also picking up on the disharmony and the lack of belief in the show, the lack of endorsement of the show as it currently stands from us.
I think a lot of it is wishful thinking as well from our part as well, because as soon as you hear this, mate? It's like, well, because it's sort of been leading up to this point. We've gotten this from, well, it's gone for well over a year. The thoughts that it's not looking good. It just seems to be getting worse and worse as far as with the ratings as well. And I think it comes to the point where it's like, oh, I just wish it was not in the news anymore, and we could just get on with loving Doctor Who as it stands, as it is.
It'd be nice if it was in the newspapers for a positive reason for a change.
Well, I would actually take more. What would be the term? I would probably take more credence with it than if it was Deadline or came from something like that. So I'm sort of taking it with a grain of salt. I'm sort of it's wishful thinking on my part as well, because I do want this show to end. A lot of people I know don't want it to end because they're like, oh, but it can get better. It's been 8 years, people. It's time to let it go. It can't recover from 8 years of just or more, depending on.
It's been largely relentless, hasn't it? I think most people, even if you've enjoyed it in fits and starts, have had a hard time of hung in by their fingernail. Charlotte, Matt's, to hear Matt talking like that, it's hard to argue with his reasoning, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you started to see different problems, and I think we've all said this, the start of the problems with Capaldi, with some of the writing and some of the politics and the sort of virtue signalling that you were seeing. And then it sort of has just progressively with each era got worse. And I think what I see a lot is sort of from Jodie's run, there were early signs that maybe this production team weren't the best people to have the show at that point. And then we got the episode, which was the proof for a lot of fans. There was hope. There was this feeling of Russell coming back. Maybe he can sort of correct the mistakes, and maybe he can bring us good quality stories again. Not from everybody, to be fair, in the fandom, but I feel like there was still a lot of fans who thought that way. And I think that's what's got people more disheartened this time, that they had that hope and it's sort of been crushed and taken away from them in a very cruel fashion, I think, in some ways. whether that's the way they handled the press, being outright telling fans, if you don't like it, don't watch it, sort of attitude. And some of there were bits when I was watching series 1 with Shooty, there were bits I enjoyed, I'm not going to deny that, and there's some episodes I did. But some of those episodes I watched, and afterwards I was like, I cannot believe that got put on television. I cannot believe that got okayed.
The things that you're sort of circling now, though, Charlotte, just to move the conversation back to the article, the things that you're sort of circling now and you're denoting as the story of as it's been of late, John, I think you'll have seen this too, is that disharmony. It hasn't been something that's happened. It hasn't been something that's happened overnight, and that usually, if you want the best sort of barometer of how Doctor Who fans are feeling and what the response is to the material that's being put out there, the best place to go is to social media. Probably if you were to speak to the experts, the people who really own Doctor Who, it wouldn't be the production team necessarily, because there's only so much they can say anyway. You're going to go to the fans. I mean, what Matt's just said there about Deadline, like, you know, he takes this with a pinch of salt because it's not from Deadline. That's my reaction too. And this is why I was initially disinterested in speaking about something that the Sun had printed. I also consider it a cheap shot to just take a shot at the Sun, at a tabloid, because we all know what they are. Everybody knows it's sort of trashy. It's the people who buy it. It's the reason why they buy it, and God bless them. It's fine. But how I looked at it is the Sun have, even by tabloid standards, got a terrible track record where Doctor Who's concerned. Doctor Who fandom, time and time again, has found them out as having taken their stories from long-running Doctor Who fandom forum, Gallifrey Base, and of late, as social media has sort of taken over from message boards, they've been lifting directly from Facebook groups, communities. Type 40's got its own Facebook group where thousands of Doctor Who fans get together. So we've seen things taken word from word and put into the Sun and accredited to insiders. So that's why I don't take the Sun on their own terms necessarily seriously.
Sorry, it all came from me, everybody.
I would say, I mean, you're right. They have got an incredibly bad track record. For me, I would say, though, that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. It's been going, like Matt was saying earlier, it's been going on for about a year now that there's been all this talk and rumors, but when you go online, do you think
it's surprising that a story like this has not made it through to a tabloid before?
I'm surprised it hasn't come up earlier. That the only thing that has really been sort of dropping over the last 12 months has been kind of the bad viewing figures and how it wasn't very well received. And I did expect something sooner than this, especially when the Disney rumors started to swirl a lot more. I think what we'll get season 2. They'll rush out the war between the land and the sea, and I think it will end there with there'll be an announcement shortly after that has aired, effectively saying, 1, the Disney deal was done, and 2, they'll basically be saying, they won't say cancelled, they'll say rested. It's having a rest. That's my opinion on it. I think that's going to happen. And again, from my personal preference, it needs a minimum of at least 5 years rest.
The thing is, I see what you're saying. I'm not necessarily arguing with that, but that's not really where the meat of the article with the Sun actually is, though. What I think, they don't really touch any of that, and I think it's surprising that they don't mention the Disney stuff explicitly. They more concentrate on more contentious sort of here and now matters. Really, frustrations right now, rather than looking at it with the fans' eye and thinking, oh well, what might be the best for Doctor Who? Because the Sun don't care, so to them, It's just where are things now, and the person who sort of switches on their TV and notices may think, oh, is there no Doctor Who Christmas special this year? It seems more geared towards people who look at it that way. To me, I mean, Gary, it says here that it goes through how the recent series have suffered abysmal ratings with fans. It talks about fans and the fandom very much as something that's sort of over there, that's existing elsewhere. And speaking to the casual sort of newspaper buyer, it says how the BBC have been shoehorning wokery into storylines. As Charlotte said, Gary, that's been happening since the Equality and Diversity mandate in 2015. So that's not necessarily news anyway, but it's a sort of culmination of various things that the Sun is sort of squishing down, really. In fact, it repeats the line about the ratings several times. But it goes on to claim that bosses have postponed, it always says bosses. No, again, these are words that nobody says anymore except in tabloid newspapers. Bosses have postponed any decision, in line with the kind of thing that John's talking about. Bosses have postponed any decision until Shooty's second season, as aired later this year. This is something that Russell T Davies has reiterated, that the BBC have stated, isn't it? So it ticks all those boxes and make sure that it's got its ducks in a row in that respect. But then it also paints this additional picture of immense dissatisfaction from the people who are supposed to love it the most.
The one thing that I think this Sun article does, which I think may be, enlightening for, the casual reader who doesn't follow this day to day like all of us, is I think this article really spotlights RTD's obsession with the agenda, with his agenda, and the things like it mentions Isaac Newton, it mentions Rose, and this, that, and the other thing. And
so a picture, doesn't it?
I think that
a movement in a particular direction.
Yeah, and so I think that a possible result of that, I think that the season 2 episodes, I think themselves are only going to feed that narrative, and the spotlight is not just going to be on, what was the rating last night? It's going to be, there's more of a spotlight on what's going to be the content of this, because now that people are more aware of, the dots being connected, people are going, oh yeah, look at that episode last night, which featured blank, 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 and I think that there's going to be much more of a spotlight on the kind of divisive content this time around because of articles like this.
There's a breakdown of the Doctor's past to remind the general punters who's played the part before, the people that they liked mostly. Some of them.
Scratch 2 out.
in some cases, John. Again, and there's the obligatory picture of a Dalek as well. So it's all largely what you'd expect. But then we go into where things get really interesting is where they talk about the extermination and the things that are attributed to their insider.
There's some things that they've not mentioned, and a lot of this doesn't come across in any sort of article on anything that's happened in the last couple of years. This crew behind this Doctor Who, like Charlotte was talking about, this crew has been the most hostile towards the viewer and the fan than any other showrunner or crew. They just kept doing the wrong thing that you should never ever do to your audience. Tell them to piss off and to F off and to touch grass and all that sort of thing. They really dropped the ball there, and they really needed to had to bring us back, and we were willing to come back because we thought, hey, it might be in good hands because you've got a good track record, and look what's happened.
A great deal of us came back simply because the guy who brought Doctor Who back from the wilderness and made it a massive success, arguably the biggest success it's ever been, Russell T Davies, he was coming back. We've got every reason to expect similar success. I don't think it's on us to have expected a man with a track record like that to deliver again when you can count Russell's like 20 odd dramas. I think it's more. I think it's like 30, maybe even 40. And his failures are like, you could count them on 2 or 3 fingers.
It's a case of be careful what you wish for, isn't it?
Because I was one as well. I thought, him coming back, he's going to steady the ship. There were rumours at the time that he'd been brought in to save it and to get it back on a level playing field again after the disastrous Chibnall era. But then he just decided to go, right, okay, the ship's heading for the cliffs. Okay, speed it up, please. We've got to go there quicker. And now here we are. And again, this is, I've said before, my personal preference is this isn't Doctor Who. This is the equivalent of a cheap, unofficial Turkish remake of a classic series that's just had this title slapped on it. It's that bad now. And I think there's only certain people to blame for it, and it's not the fans to blame for it. It's the people, as Matt was saying, the ones who had the arrogance to think, you know what, we're going to do this regardless, and we're going to insult people that have been loyal followers of this show for quite a number of years, who actually came back to give it a chance after what had happened previously, and were spat on from above. So they've only got themselves to blame. And again, I don't know if this is going to happen. It's a paper article, but all I will say is it's a question of if, not when, in my opinion.
In this piece in the Sun, Charlotte, when they switched to talking to their insider, I'm not convinced there is an insider. I think they've taken all of this based on, I've got no proof, but my instinct is they've taken all of this from social media and or from Gallifrey base and just sort of squished it all down into some sort of digestible form to serve up to a mainstream audience who buy the newspaper or surf the app or whatever. This isn't meant to be consumed by us. But they start with how Ncuti Gatwa, the actor Ncuti Gatwa, how he doesn't want to be tied to the series. He's got all these plans in LA and various other places, the way that a lot of actors would have. But it also mentions how his team, he's got a team, handlers, in the way that P. Diddy or one of those has got a team, I suppose, one of those big American. That's how they paint him out to be one of these big American stars. They say that his team see a lot of fan backlash. So this is why I think that how John's talking there, I think that it has sort of perforated through to the mainstream, and it's caught their imagination, and that they know there's a story here of this disgruntled fan base, because it says his team see a lot of fan backlash and don't want the perception of him still being the Doctor to get in the way of the rest of his career, of him getting future work. So it's got to the point where this role and this series and our reaction to his participation in it could impact his broader career in a negative way. That's not on us. And to be fair, only part of that can be on him. I think a great deal of it must be put on the shoulders of Russell T Davies, who gave him the stupid stuff to wear and the silly things to say and the terrible stories to play in the first place. We've got this quote here from the article in The Sun. It says, Ncuti Gatwa was also a problem for fans, not because he was the first non-white actor in the role. So good for them. They're not calling us racists for a change. Not because he was the first non-white actor in the role. Indeed, a lot of us just didn't care, wished him well and just wanted the best actor for the role and had no reason not to think that it was him. You trust the people who are in the room, don't you? Not because he was the first non-white actor in the role, but because he blurred the Doctor's eccentric image by wearing latex tops and skirts in mags. Fags and mags. The BBC look like they've managed to kill off a character who, in theory, was supposed to live forever. So they know that the character has been bent out of shape to be next to unrecognisable, Charlotte, and that's what we don't like.
Yeah, and for me, that's the biggest thing that I thought was the problem with the writing, if I'm being honest. There were so many moments that I felt like they were weakening the character. They were giving him moments when he wasn't being strong or heroic, or he wasn't being clever, or he wasn't sort of being the man in control, like certain key traits that we associate with this role. I felt like the writing.
So would you say, Charlotte, that for all that I've said about The Sun and what we've said about tabloid journalism, and regardless of where they may have got this information from, The Sun, are not misrepresenting us? This is fair?
I think it's a lot more complex than just latex tops and skirts. I think there's a lot more going on. Like I said, for me, there was so many moments that I was like, that's not the character I fell in love with on screen. And it was mainly the writing. Some moments was acting, I'm not going to deny that, the crying, for example. But there were key moments. Literally, I was chatting with my mate today, and there's moments when any other doctor would stand up and be sort of, even if there was an enemy, I thought back to that moment with Matt, when he stood on top of the Stonehenge and he's got every single enemy, the worst of the worst above him. And he looks like he's in the corner and he's not going to get out. And what does he do in that moment? He stands up and basically gives a speech saying, you're scared of me. You need to run. Think about every single day I've darkened your door, and just go. And that's the power this character should have. And how did they write Ncuti? They wrote him stood crying, having to have Mel at one point in the finale take his hand and drag him away because he came across as so scared.
Charlotte, I was just going to say that episode quickly as well. That was a fantastic example of the writing whereby he goes to an alien planet because he needs to find a spoon. So that's another example of what, Dan was kind of suggesting a few minutes ago about the fact you can't put all the blame on Ncuti. As much as I don't like Ncuti and I think he was miscast, the blame is with Russell T Davies and the writing. Some of it, the way it was written that first season, also almost came across like he couldn't even be bothered with a lot of it, because some of the stuff, was just paint by numbers stuff and just sheer laziness.
Undercooked, didn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, Charlotte.
It seems to me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Charlotte.
No, like I said, and that's my issue. I think the character in quite a few different ways, I agree, got bent out of shape. Whether that was the writing or the look, we've all said about he should have had one costume really that he stuck with. This revolving door of costumes was a mistake as well. And and I think there's a lot of, and a sort of, my feeling is, if this is true and Ncuti is on his way out, we will see. I'm actually of the mindset of, I'm actually hoping he gets a lot better work and he gets actually writers which don't want to give him sort of issues and actually wants to let him have the ability to show what he can do. I feel like this run, instead of showcasing him, has actually weakened him. And that's why I could understand if he's possibly thinking I need to get out, but we'll see.
Well, I'm in the height of the Jodie Whittaker era, Gary. I don't know if you remember this, because this was something that we spoke of on this show. We also heard reports there from our contacts there, that Whittaker's agent was very aware, not just that her character was being poorly received, but that the show at that point, because even Peter Capaldi's stuff, perhaps the audience was shrinking a little. The profile of the show maybe wasn't as high as it had been up to that point. It was still a show that people looked forward to, and there was never really a bad word said about it broadly. But there was a massive change in the tone of conversation surrounding Doctor Who when Whittaker was playing the part. And again, sources told us around that time that she was advised to get out, basically. And it could be the case. It wouldn't be unreasonable, would it? Just as Charlotte said, that Ncuti could have been given similar advice. Particularly when it's just been in Barbie, which was like the biggest film of 2024, wasn't it?
I mean, as far as Jodie goes, it seems like, they at first initially they were thinking that the whole like glass ceiling with that infamous ad and the fact that she was the first woman, that narrative would carry, would dictate the narrative for a certain amount of time. But then when the quality of the actual stories undercut that, it didn't help. As far as Ncuti goes, it seems to me that the tone of this article, kind of as Charlotte was saying, takes pains to kind of separate Shooty out from what's being done to the show. I mean, the article, it seems to paint him as, a talented, in-demand star who Hollywood wants. He has a lot of roles specifically that he's being, talked about. There's a buzz around him, but that
I'm not personally, Gary. I'm not convinced any of that's true.
Well,
but for the purposes of a reader of this article, let's say it is true.
No, that's what I mean. That's, like I said, the article is very carefully worded to paint him as positive and not responsible for whatever is befalling the show right now. I mean, look at the headline. It doesn't even say he quits. Quits is in quotes because they don't want to label Shooty Gatwa as a quitter. They mentioned the ratings. They mentioned the woke storylines, which is really not to do with him. So it seems like this particular article.
It sounds more like a withdrawal than a kind of a quitting.
Yeah, wondering whether the mission of this article is basically to kind of say, like you said, put the onus on the BBC, and RTD, and Shooty Gatwa is perfectly justified in wanting to preserve his career by separating himself out from
it. So feasibly, Gary, do you think it's possible? You know what I said about them having got this from us, from in the fandom? Mm-hmm. Is it possible, do you think? I mean, and you too, Matt, you're all over popular culture as well. Is it possible they could have been given this story by Shooty Gatwa's people?
That crossed my mind earlier this morning when I read that, because, I mean, like I said, the tone doesn't talk about how his acting, that a lot of fans saw his acting as not being true to the character, as Charlotte outlined. It doesn't mention the unfortunate comments about the touching grass. It doesn't mention any of the stuff which would have put him.
To be fair, a lot of that wouldn't have made its way through to such as the Sun.
Right.
But it also, I don't know, but it would. But I think that if they spent time with the fandom, they would have spotted that was what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Would have been speaking about, Matt. I mean, is it feasible? Do you think that this story could have been planted by Gatwa's representation?
Well, I don't think he's smart enough for it.
I think he's probably smart enough to employ good agents, shall we say, who are looking after his interests.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was going to say something really nasty then, but I'm not going to. So look, I mean, we can all see everything now for the last year. What the reason for Russell T Davies employing him was all about. It was for this new generation of what was it, the TikTok generation, whatever they call it. He thought that he was going to be bringing in. He was hoping to replace us. He was literally hoping to replace us. He thought he was better than everybody that's actually built him up over the years. He thought that he was invincible. And the fact of the matter is, it's gotten to the point now where everything has fallen apart. They're all scrambling for other work. And obviously I've heard things about Shooty. I don't know if you're aware of a perfume commercial or something.
We'll come to that in a little while. Yeah.
So there's other work and everything. I mean, is he that dim that he doesn't realize that he is locked in for 3 years at least without other work he has to concentrate on this.
That's why I'm thinking. That's why I'm wondering, John, where this could have come from. Why now? Because everything is so quiet. I mean, Gary was just talking there, John, about that separation that's here, and looking at it, looking at the wording here from the Insider, it just carries on. It expressly states, the Insider said the show has been poorly managed in recent years. And there's lots of people who've been working on this show for years who are being cast aside due to that poor leadership. That's expressly said by this Insider, and how people warned some episodes were getting too caught up in personal agendas rather than telling the story. So that's all stuff that we've said. But the bulk of it is actually more concerned with just as Gary said, the management of the show. And when you're running a show like this, you're not just managing scripts and resources. Part of it is the management of people too.
I think you're right. You guys were talking a few minutes ago about the fact that I do think that there's been a brief by his agents and his representatives, because this plays to me exactly like, going to my football analogy, a world-class player who is tied into a contract and is desperately trying to get himself a deal elsewhere. It's got the same feel to it. And I think he's briefing. I think there's also potentially disgruntled production people that are, people working at Bad Wolf in just general day-to-day production, who, if this was to be borne out and be true, would be very disgruntled, because you would be, wouldn't you? If you suddenly had, the producers and the writers suddenly scuttle off to new series and they're okay, Jack, and then suddenly you're out of work for a few
John, who of us hasn't been there?
Exactly.
Unhappy working environments breed unhappy workers.
And what do you do? What do you do in that situation?
You talk about
you
it.
lash out and talk about it, and you get frustrated.
You talk about it to whoever will sit still enough for you to listen to you.
Exactly right. So I think there's truth on both fronts, and I would say it's quite telling actually that you're right. It's being directed higher up, and when you look back at the series, you can't fault them for that, because if these people gave them a remit to do certain things and they pushed it a certain way, and it's been rejected, and these people are paying the price potentially for it. So everyone got screwed by the head guys, it sounds like to me.
Dan, do you think it's curious that, there's any connection to the fact that this story is coming mere days after the news about Russell doing the tiptoe now, which everybody, at least online, seemed to take as indication that, the reaction to that was, okay, he's off on another show, it's over, and now this drops?
I think it's a different matter entirely.
Okay.
I think it's coincidental. I think that it's quite likely that Russell's co-writing that script. I won't spend too long with this, but Russell's co-written that show. It's quite likely that those scripts were written months ago.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, as I understand it, that's about to film. So I think it's of no real relevance to Doctor Who whatsoever. And besides which, there's enough, the Doctor Who material that's already banked up is enough that's going to be on screen for the next however long. And we already know that he's got several potential season 3 scripts. When he last spoke about that publicly, the bulk of those, certainly his share of those, were also in a partial state of completion. So I think it bears no relevance on his involvement or non-involvement in Doctor Who whatsoever. I think we should put that out of our minds, really. And
Can I just ask for permission, guys? Can we go on a stealth raid, steal those scripts, and drop them into the ocean, never to be seen again?
Yeah. Drop them into the ocean.
No,
I want to drop them onto the ocean. I want us to do full cast readings of them here on the stream.
They've already been picked up for Big Finish.
I like it. So this
Revenge of the Dog.
Charlotte?
I think there's bigger red lights or like warning signs around right now. And I agree. I don't know if that Russell thing is one. I think the bigger sort of issue, which hasn't been resolved yet.
Right is right. That's what they do. Right is right.
I think the bigger thing is money, basically. Where they're going to get their money from, because there's been lots of little signals from Disney's end, nothing official, and they've come out and not officially said anything. But there's been lots of little signs of a possible Disney coming away. Yeah. And I think that's sort of the bigger warning, that I think a lot of these sort of rumors now that are circling have sort of all come from. Because
Matt's pointed out before now in various conversations on live streams about how Disney conduct themselves, shall we say, how they promote, what they say, what they don't say, and when they choose to remain silent and for how long. So I think the very last people to speak about any of this will be Disney. And not least of all because they've got the least stake in this as well. You know, you could say that Shooty Gatwa himself has got more stake on this.
They've got the least stake, but their money is a big part of how those 2 series got funded. I completely agree. Like, it will be the last thing that they'll sort of have on there.
If it goes down with Shooty in that role, for example, it could dog Shooty for the rest of his career. Disney, after 3 or 4 months, Disney won't give it a moment's thought. And more to the point, Disney Plus customers, they probably ain't going to miss it because there'll be something else there. Because that's the nature of streaming, isn't it? And of the way we consume those kind of materials. They always make sure there's something else. You know, whatever it is you miss one week, you know, saying, oh, there's a new shiny thing. It's terrible, isn't it, when you think about it in those terms? But that's kind of human nature as well. Now, this article was originally published not that long ago. It was just last night, as of time of recording, at 10 p.m. It was updated too. So yes, it was updated not that long later. In fact, 9:53 the following morning. I would assume by Rod McPhee. But why would he need to update it? I wonder. Well, we do know, don't we? Because within a short period of time, you see the reason why I poured scorn on that really, and the thing that I used as a kind of barometer was, you know, it's the Sun. They've never really been on the mark when it comes to Doctor Who, looking back through the past. Now, for example, in 2006, they published this, that David Tennant had quit 3 years before he actually quit. So they haven't got the best of track records. They also claimed that Ollie Alexander was to be Doctor Who. That was another one of theirs.
One in the middle.
Yeah, and do you think we were worried then? Jeez.
Yeah, that's Angela Rayner there in her time, a stint as the Doctor.
That's primordial Doctor, that one, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've been down on the Sun, but at the time what I said was, you know, if it was the Mirror, I might be singing a different tune because the Mirror have got a better track record. And the Mirror did step in the following morning. So this was the follow-on piece from the Mirror. And it's this one just says the BBC issues statement as it's claimed Doctor Who has been axed amid Shooty Gatwa exit rumours. So they were right in there with their writer Seamus Duff. But that doesn't sound like... That doesn't sound like a real name.
It doesn't sound right character.
It certainly sounds like it. Yeah. So they were in there right away to sort of to quantify things. They repeated a certain amount of what was in that initial report from the Sun, but they didn't go into great details. But it was considered that was out. When was it out? That was published by 10 a.m. the following morning. It's less than no, I apologize. No, it was an hour later. It was an hour after the Sun's piece. That's right. Yeah, and that's also been updated too. But they are very explicit. The BBC has furiously, that word again, Gary, furiously denied that Doctor Who is on the cusp of being cancelled, but refused to rule out Shooty Gatwa walking away from the iconic show. So the Mirror right in there with a counterpunch, I suppose. Even though they weren't in the
wasn't the BBC? Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't the BBC statement basically just say the show has not been shelved, which factually is true? You know, it hasn't. There hasn't been official statement that it's been shelved. So that's correct. But that's like as non-committal as you can be about the future of the show.
This sounds so much like BBC protecting their investment, because you've got another 2 series to come out yet, and if people are gonna, they've already lost a certain amount of viewers. They don't want to go, oh, well, there's no point in watching it because it's going to finish. Exactly. It's been axed, you know? And that happens a lot.
In what you're just saying there, in the Sun's initial piece, they'd spoken how the crew who were working on the show in Cardiff, it says their insider said, the crew working on the show in Cardiff are said to be furious at being left in limbo after filming wrapped last week. Because last week there was some pickups, some pickups on material for the season premiere, I think it is, of season 2. So they were just doing a few little pieces here and there just last week. Crew working on the show in Cardiff are said to be furious at being left in limbo. And that's coming from the Sun's piece. That's simply not true. I know for a fact from my sources, I know people working on these productions in that area, in this world. The crew, they're all freelance. They all moved on from the week-to-week schedule of Doctor Who nearly a year ago, and because they all work freelance, they'll have all booked up their time, allocated it in their schedule as far as they possibly can in advance. They'll have known they were filming what they were filming 2 weeks ago and how long they were filming it for. So that element of the Sun's piece is simply not true. I've had that confirmed as well by my sources since. I've double-checked this. So I know that element of the original Sun article simply isn't true. None of the crew have been left in limbo. They all knew when things were filming and when they weren't.
I tell you what, though, I really hope we're going back to earlier, though, Dan, where you were saying about, the briefing from Shooty's team. I really hope that we get an RTD's team also briefing against Shooty's team, because that would be a superb confidential series for season 2. Or, I would watch that without fail. That would be brilliant. It'd be like Game of Thrones for Doctor Who, wouldn't it?
The final quote from the Sun's Insider claims that the word on the set is that the BBC will shelve the series for at least 5 years, and so the crew have been told not to hold their breath for at least 10 years. Who says that to any employee, either on staff or freelance? I'll hold your horses. Could be 5, could be 10 years. This is what it's just ridiculous, So it's just people just don't speak like that.
Just
and in that world, it's ridiculous to me. That stinks of the kind of conversations that we would have, the kind of way that we would joke around on a forum or in a Facebook group. That's what makes me think that the Sun have got pieces of this from the fandom, or it just doesn't add up for me at all.
That sounds more like a crazy fan that wants something to happen. They're literally willing it back into existence. They're like, oh no, it'll be in 5 to 10 years. That's what it sounds like. It just sounds like
exactly.
Omega.
Exactly. The press and the general audience, to them, it's just a show that had its time and disappeared again. People just don't think on those sort of terms outside of Doctor Who fan circles. So again, to me, that's a real giveaway. The Mirror did take the time, though, to actually speak to the BBC and say it was just an hour later. How they managed to get somebody so quickly, I don't know. I don't know whether to believe all this happened within the timeframes that they claim, but how they got somebody so quickly, I don't know. But they did. I mean, there was the standard stuff. They got a picture of a Dalek as well. There's always a picture of a Dalek. I don't know if you've noticed this, but they've got a quote here from the BBC. So this was the official response from the BBC spokesperson, who the Mirror claim slammed, furiously slammed, Gary. The Mirror, they say a BBC spokesperson has slammed the suggestion is planning to retire the show amid signs of audience fatigue. So this is the full quote here. The BBC spokesperson said the story is incorrect. Doctor Who has not been shelved. As we have previously stated, we're getting touchy now. As we have previously stated, the decision on season 3 will be made after season 2 airs. The deal with Disney Plus was for 26 episodes, and exactly half of those still have to transmit. And as for the rest, we never comment on the Doctor and future storylines. Now, when this was reported in an update to the Sun's article, the Sun left the parts in yellow out. So the bits that, which is very curious, the Sun updated their article, but they left out the piece that said the initial story was incorrect, that their information was erroneous. and the stuff about how they never comment. So that's curious as well. But they're quite right. I mean, if we look at if we start from the end, they're right. The BBC never comment on that stuff. They never have. As a statement in its own right, all this really is, from memory, is a repeat of, just as they say, everything that they've stated before.
Yeah, Russell's been quite persistent and has sort of kept to the party line, which is usually a sign when Russell keeps to one thing that he's probably telling the truth of. Series 2 is going to be sort of a big factor on how they greenlit possibly a Series 3 or beyond that. It seems to be the sort of, it's such a different change because obviously we know that they filmed Series 1 of Shooty and Series 2 in one big block. There was no sort of stopping, there was no testing sort of waters or trying to get fan feedback. They just went straight into that second series. And it does feel like now there's a real change that they want to wait. They want to see how Series 2 goes. Well, that's what it feels like to me. And I think Series 2 personally is actually going to shape a lot of what BBC do in the future with this show. And I think they're going to be watching the viewing figures very closely. With
or without a streaming partner, it'll shape, yeah.
Yeah, I think they've been bitten because they did that massive filming of 1 and 2 back to back. I think they're fully regretting that now because they've not had any time to adjust any of the storylines. Whereas going forward, they can now take into account fan feedback. And that's why I think they're sort of at this crossroads. That's what I felt for a while now, with the statements that have been coming out from Russell and the sort of feel of this pause, this definite pause in sort of production. It feels like that they're at this crossroads and they're just going to be more careful and see how this Series 2 gets received. And I think the problem is, and then I'll finish, Series 2 has got so much pressure now. Mm-hmm. It's got so much riding on it. Yep. And I would argue it's got more than that first series of Shooty now, that this has to work. This has to hit, or they're in real trouble, is my personal feelings.
8 episodes make up season 2, with the War Between the Land and the Sea coming, I think that's pretty soon after. How many episodes is that again? John, that's 6 parts. 5 parts. 5 parts. So yeah, that's that. It's all tallies up.
And I think Charlotte's right, but I would say, and again, I've got my cynical hat on tonight, but season 2 is not going to do any better than season 1. If not, it could be worse because they're filmed as a block. So if anyone's expecting it to be different to season 1, bar the odd reshoot here and there, it's not gonna be. And I would also say, look, we will know when the show is going to be cancelled because we know how RTD likes to overhype things, and he'll come back and he'll put out a video and he'll say, this is going to be the biggest cancellation ever. There's going to be fireworks. There's going to be explosions. You're going to love it. We're going to have a dog on a police box over there. It's going to be splendid. Come and watch.
You know what?
But the one thing that, and I know that we're not specifically talking about it today, but it's interesting that there's no, articles or anywhere out there about here's the reasons why Disney would want to renew. And I don't say that sarcastically. I mean, like, quite honestly, like, what about how the show has done or been received or whatever that would put it on the plus side in terms of factors that they use to make renewal decisions? I mean,
alongside the rebuttal from the BBC spokesperson, Gary, there's a potted history of Doctor Who itself from the 60s right through, through to the end of the classic run, and then the restart, Matt, and they're quite generous with that. There's a couple of things where as fans we go, oh, that's not how it actually happened, but they've gone to an effort really to kind of frame it kind of fairly, shall we say. But I don't know, it still feels it still feels solemn.
So I believe that to Disney, Doctor Who is just content.
Yep.
Oh, without
for them.
No
and so I feel that is just like a little bit of an investment to them. And I mean, as I'm understanding it, Bad Wolf are also like a third partner, aren't they? So they're putting money into this as well, besides the BBC and Disney. Is that right?
Well, what happens is that Bad Wolf are commissioned by. Well, no, it's the British Broadcasting Corporation that commissioned Doctor Who. So they commissioned Bad Wolf. Bad Wolf being partly owned by Sony. They commissioned Bad Wolf to make the show in combination with BBC Studios. So they pool resources and pool facilities, and then they connect with a streaming partner, also a co-producer with that global platform.
There's definitely a story with Disney to be told there, where there's been more. There's more to the story than what we know with the Disney deal. There has to be. This just sounds so Disney. They would just not do that. They would just not take Doctor Who and go, we'll put in an investment of so many billions of dollars. They had to have gotten something extra out of all this, and I think that I know that the BBC holds the rights to Doctor Who and everything like that. So I'm not saying that it's Disney trying to get the rights to Doctor Who. I just think that there's something
bigger
going
picture
on behind there. Yeah, there's just something behind the scenes. We won't find out till later.
I always
with
felt,
BlackRock.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I always thought the two positives for Disney. Yeah, the two positives for Disney are, one, it's like you said, Matt, it's content, because that Disney Plus is effectively just a sausage making factory, essentially, and the costs that they've put out, it's very low, very low outlay for Disney in the grand scheme of things worldwide to invest in Doctor Who. So those are two pluses. The only thing that I would say about Disney at the moment is Disney are not in great shape all around the place at the moment. There's a lot of investigations going on. There's suits going on. They're pulling back from DEI and woke. There's a lot of conflict going on there at the moment, and I think like what you were going to, Matt, there, I always felt, and again, I got no evidence on this at all, but I always felt they didn't just want the new series of Doctor Who. I always felt globally, outside the UK, they wanted the library of Doctor Who. So they wanted all of the previous stuff going back to 63. That's what I felt. And that could still happen. Deals get worked out all the time.
I certainly feel they had their eye on everything from 2005 onwards.
Yeah. I don't think that they would actually. I don't think that Disney would be interested in the classic series, because to them at the time, I would say that this deal was going, would be that the show was problematic to them, like it is now with Davies, just the fact that a lot of the stuff that they would probably they wouldn't. If you look at Disney Plus, I don't know if a lot of you have a Disney Plus, but if you look at it, a lot of their stuff that's vintage is very curated. Okay, so they're not going. They've already gone back.
Is it harder to find, or is it grouped in a different way? Yes,
it's harder to find, and it's also it's not like otherwise I'd still have it, because of their vast library, past library of classics. But they've already gone back. They've changed Peter Pan. They've changed Fantasia. They've changed all these things because of them being problematic, and that was 20 years ago. So
Now,
and they're only showed those versions now, you know, and I think
they're rolling
Doctor
it back.
Who, yeah, and I don't think it matters now anyway. I don't think that they would show the classic series. So I think Dan's right in that they're looking at the series from 2005, but if you look at it, even that's a little bit problematic now. You know, some of that.
A nip and a cut here and there, a Hugh Edwards here, a somebody else there. You know, that's how it works, isn't it? As a
I
reminder,
wouldn't even know who Hugh Edwards was, you know.
Support physical media.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, since the last time we spoke about this, it's been reiterated by Russell T Davies in his column in Doctor Who magazine. He confirmed what we told you on Type 40 Live, our 200th live stream a few weeks ago. Russell T Davies confirmed there was no Christmas 2025 special ordered with Series 15.
Oh my! I've been hearing different things, but oh wow, that's
they're not gonna place an order just for a single episode. They'll either do 13 or 26.
It's unlikely. So again, yes, obviously that was information that we received from our sources, backed up within, I think this was a week, less than a week later. Doctor Who magazine and Den of Geek, I think they may have had it first even. Doctor Who showrunner confirms Christmas 2025 special wasn't ordered with Series 15. I think it's time we checked in with the people in the live chat here, because we've been streaming this edition of the show over to YouTube, Rumble, and on X as well. I'm proud to say they're bound to have some opinions about everything we've been coming out with so far, and maybe they're doing a bit of venting as well. And who can blame them after listening to us go on for over an hour? So let's go and see what everybody's got to say over there.
Oh my God, I'm a big fan. Thank you.
All right, good to see you.
Come on, man. Nice to meet you, mate.
All the best. Take care.
That's Doctor Who. I just met Doctor Who. Stop playing with me, bro. This is the type of places we be at. We meet Doctor Who. What are you doing?
We are live. That's what we're doing. We're live on YouTube, Rumble, and on X too with this edition of the Type 40 podcast. It's a Stop the Press edition, an impromptu edition, response to these a cluster of articles there that are rolling their way across the media. The initial one in The Sun, followed up by The Mirror. There was one in the Radio Times as well, largely saying the same thing. We'll come to that in a little while. And the Daily Mail have followed through. I think there's been several more since as well, just like Lee Smith here says, this story is everywhere now. Doctor Who is being talked about. Absolutely. What have we got here? What have we got? So
it's refreshing, but shame it's not for the right reasons, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
It's like I say, I love it's better to be talked about than not talked about. But it would be nice if it was something sort of positive, something that brings people together, rather than it's continually divisive and that causes problems. Okay, we've got Creds Will Roll in the live chat there. What a fabulous name. Says, I'm not seeking attention. I'm sharing my views. Stop making up stories. Who's making up stories? About you, Creds Will Roll? Or are we making up stories? You'll have to clarify. Maybe as I work my way back, we can find out what Creds means there. It sounds like we've got some mischief going on in the live chat, but that is the nature of the beast. Richard suggests that Russell was the real trickster.
There you go.
The trickster was a character from the Sarah Jane Adventures, right, John?
Yeah. And oh dear, don't try and ruin that for me.
Simon Ashley has cancelled his Disney Plus Disney Plus
on the Malibu
subscription. Not yet. The night is young, my friend. The night is young. Yes. So, like you were saying, Matt, you've cancelled yours.
Yes.
Disney
I'm not
Plus.
returning because of Doctor Who. It was because of Doctor Who. That's the only reason why I kept it, and because of the fact that like I said, all the vintage stuff, they just didn't have enough to warrant it to be kept.
It's difficult to believe Disney wouldn't have enough of anything, an abundance of anything you could possibly name. I'm happy to say that Problem Being has joined us in the live chat. The composer, the arranger, the performer of the best theme tune in Doctor Who podcasting, the Type 40 and Type 40 live theme tunes. Creswell Roll says, Russell is fabulous. I'll bet he's crafted a fabulous second season. Well, look, we all hope that, Creds. All opinions are welcome here. Yeah, we are a bit down on him at the moment, but we all want the best for Doctor Who. I think we'd all love 8 fantastic episodes to arrive on screen from, I think it's April they're talking about. So moving backwards to see what else is being spoken about here. Epic Fantasy says, Gallifrey Base.
We're going on evidence.
Talking about the cancellation of something we despise. That's a new name, Epic Fantasy. I've not seen that before. It sounds like a dirty book. But that was a great picture there. That's just my mind.
Season 2 episode title, guys.
Oh, what else have we got? Let's work our way backwards. Yeah, plans change all the time, says Ezra Goldstein. Of course they do. And this is something that we stated previously. Whenever we talk about information that we receive, we were deluged during the Jodie Whittaker era.
Yeah, don't forget that was cancelled. Don't forget that was cancelled. This has happened later on.
It was cancelled.
The whole thing was officially cancelled behind the scenes. But, and they resurrected it. So it could still be resurrected, but I don't think with the same crew.
And I don't think we can underestimate the deep sense of betrayal that a lot of fans felt, because after the sky-high expectations of RTD's triumphant return, first thing we saw was the walking Davros in the Children in Need special, and then we got the being lectured to in the specials. And I think that there was like a deep-seated sense of resentment in a lot of fans because that their hopes had been dashed. And I think that's playing into
the male presenting Time Lord thing was an absolute kick in the teeth as far as I'm concerned. I was just devastated by that.
I think that's not
embarrassed.
That's not something we're going to forgive anytime soon. Darren Bradley says he wouldn't surprise me if USAID was involved in this, in the way that, we were pointing back an oligarch or a BlackRock or anything that can't be explained by something on the surface to make any kind of reasonable sense. Usually means there's something going on under the surface, under the undersurface, John. There are several layers underneath all of this, involving all manner of people you wouldn't ever think would be remotely connected, and yet they are.
Yeah, exactly. And as we joked before, we can no longer say this is a British show paid for by the taxpayers, because it looks like that the Americans were actually funding it from USAID.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Gary's the one who took.
Make Who great again.
We've got a comment here from Anthony Parkinson. This is the rest of the world doesn't give a flying feck about Doctor Who. We've got people from the rest of the world here. Matt and Gary, they must care. They're here. Yeah. People in the live chat from abroad, they care as well. I know what you mean. It's not part of global culture in the way that it is British culture, but I think that some people care. Right, Matt?
I'll always love Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Nerdaholics is in the live chat. That's our mate Sean, and he says, just think, we had the 11th hour and then the space babies. I love space babies. What do you want?
He loves space babies, Nerdaholics.
Don't put my doctor in that sentence with space babies. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Burn that thing. Burn that thing to the ground.
We've got Babette Bombshell in the live chat coming out with something else, which they keep repeating. You keep telling us this every time we go live. Babette Bombshell, it's not true. That's not true. Yeah, I've researched this over and over again.
Walt Disney was in negotiations at the time.
No matter how many times I tell you, don't believe me, but it's not true. Disney are trying to do a Netflix.
Ron Miller.
Fact, says Marine Boy. Marine Boy. That was a cartoon as well, wasn't it? Disney are trying to do a Netflix. What, to be successful, do you mean?
How
long has the Disney Plus... How long has the Disney Plus platform been in existence, would you say, John? Has it been about 4 years since The Mandalorian?
Was it 2019?
Yeah. Because the
Time
US
flies when you're
Because
not
you guys
having
got
fun.
it a bit later than the rest of the rest of the world got it a bit earlier. You guys,
You're quite right. We did. You
guys were a bit slow.
Doctor Who. Story of my life.
Doctor
Who crew is touching grass. Pigs in Space is better sci-fi than Pigs in Space was great. I love Pigs in Space.
They did have a crossover with Doctor Who as well.
Epic Fantasy has been reading the science since 2005, including the denials of the agenda, which a blind man could see. The contempt for the fans was palpable. I think that's unfair. I think there was a low-level disdain for some portions of the fan base. I think this is a little harsh. But there've been disgruntled fans since 2005. But there've been disgruntled fans since 1996. Actually,
the Ood were definitely non-binary.
Well, in fact, I think there's been disgruntled fans probably since around 1983. Yeah. There's always been disgruntled fans.
Did you see any female Ood?
No. We've got some really offensive comments there in the live chat. I can't read that one, Domgo, but you do you. You do you. What have we got here? Babette Bombshell says, I think that a lot of people here are just assuming that the BBC will still be in existence in the next 5 years. Disney is playing a war of attrition with the rights to Doctor Who. Babette Bombshell is obsessed with Disney getting the rights to Doctor Who.
I don't think Disney are that intelligent. I don't think Disney are that intelligent to play.
And I don't think Disney
4D chess. You
the
know,
BBC the BBC will still be here in 5 years' time. I think the BBC will still be around in 10 years' time. It'll just be a very different BBC because whether they like it or not, they're going to have to be defunded. It's going to happen sooner or later, which will mean a massive reinvention. Anthony Parkinson suggests that season two will be way worse than season one. Surely not, Charlotte. You believe this?
I hope not. We'll have to wait and see.
We all hope not, don't we? Marine Boy suggests that nothing will change. Nothing ever changes, does it really anymore?
Well, look on the bright side. Next month we're getting G20 on Amazon Prime, so you have to look on the bright side.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that. Daniel Blythe is in the live chat and suggests that War Between the Land and the Sea could air in November. But if there is no Series 3, they could bump it into the new year. As I understand it, they want to air the spin-off before the end of this year to draw things to a close in a tidy and timely manner. We'll come to that in a couple of minutes too. Domgo says, I'm not going to talk too much about the content of season 2 because that is a conversation for another time. But Type 40 Live, our live stream magazine show, will be back next week, Thursday from 8 p.m. We're going to unpack all of that. We'll be back every single week with lots of live streams covering all that stuff. Don't worry about that. Robert Payne reminds us there's 8 episodes to go, 4 of which are not written by Russell T Davies. Dr. Once joins us here on YouTube and says, I think the decision won't be made until after season 2, but it's just a formality and it won't be brought back. They just have to keep to that until it's broadcast. So this is just the old-fashioned thing, John, of don't say anything until you have to. That's what Dr. Once believes.
And it's common sense as well, isn't it? Because, if you want to get potential viewers in for season 2, announcing it's cancelled before season 2 is just going to turn people off to it anyway. So
it's not the best gambit.
Yeah, they've got it on. They keep it on a post-it note every time someone asks.
Yeah.
Lee Smith here passes a comment about the Welsh government. They could get a refund on their £4 million back. That's Lee Smith on YouTube there, Charlotte. And although we're poking a little fun, there's a lot of government money and what do they call it? Sort of lottery money and Screen Alliance involvement in this explosion of television and film in that part of Britain. It concentrated in the sort of Cardiff area and stretching out to Bristol, so moving it away from London. It's had a lot of investment, hasn't it? And some of that has made its way into Bad Wolf. They've done very nicely out of this. And if they do cock up Doctor Who, if this is irredeemable, then that's not a great return on that investment, is it, for the Welsh or British taxpayer?
Well, no, because when Doctor Who came back in 2005, it was a massive boon to Cardiff. and to Wales and to sort of filming in the UK. And you can't help but think sort of you had that start in 2005 and now you've got big movies that film here because for a variety of reasons they do. So Britain has become sort of once again quite a sort of a hotspot, I would argue, for filming. So we need success stories to keep that momentum going. And the more sort of bad stories we have, it could damage that. And we don't want that. We want Britain to keep being seen as this great place to film, which is what we all sort of want, I think.
I would also just add in on this as well about we're obviously rightly putting a lot of blame on Russell T Davies, but you've also got to blame Julie Gardner and Jane Tranter, to be honest, because they were the ones that should have been keeping a close eye on it. You know, where if Russell's doing what he wants to do, you know, everybody has a boss at the end of the day, and they should have been reining a lot of this in. So, you know, they're as much culpable in this as Russell T Davies is, if it comes to pass.
Well, but I mean, RTD was crowing about how the fact that nobody ever says no to him. You know?
And that's the problem. That's the problem, you know.
Oh, yeah, he was boasting about that fact in an article, an interview.
Yeah.
You know, in any walk of life, any employment, you know, if you have someone like that, is it worth bringing them in? Because the amount of carnage they cause because of that ego, it's not worth having them involved in a business. And, you know, they've worked with him before. They knew what he was like. But again, you're talking about a lot more money than they even had in the BBC days. And not just those two, but there's probably people, you know, I'm talking Sony and I'm talking Disney, that were probably looking down at them now and thinking, well, hang on a minute, we left you in charge of this. This is what we got for it. We're not at all impressed by it. And I just saw Lee's Problem Beings comments a few minutes ago about, he was saying he knows a source, you know, that are saying that, you know, Disney were not at all impressed with what RTD did. But it wouldn't surprise me. But again, there's so many people that are involved to share the blame for this if it comes to fruition.
Yeah.
Mark is in the live chat here on YouTube and says that response from the BBC that we read out there, he describes it as very non-committal. If there was no truth to it, he wouldn't have stopped with talking only about season 2. I don't know about that. Because nothing else has been commissioned. There are legal boundaries, parameters by which they can speak. And also,
it's a lovely limbo, isn't it?
Yeah. This is
it's an out either way. Yeah, so you get yourself out either way with it, don't you? By going, well, if we don't talk about after season 2, no one can say to us, we never said that it was going to carry on.
This is the nature of, John, in my eyes, this is the nature of PR. So yes, it is non-committal, but all PR is pretty non-committal.
Yeah.
But you know, they state whatever they state very, very clearly, and they start with the clear stuff. Say, look, this is incorrect. And there's no fat on a word like incorrect. Something's either correct or it's incorrect. And then the rest of it is fairly non-committal, restatement of stuff.
It's the wording as well. The wording has changed because suddenly now it's an experiment with Disney, you know?
Yeah.
And suddenly, oh, yes, it's been an interesting experiment. That kind of sounds very final to me. I don't know if it does with you, but it does with me. It's like, oh, okay, so the experiment's not going to continue then.
Yeah.
And didn't the brand manager, Matt, make some kind of comment like in the last week about when asked about the branding, say something like, well, it's something that will live forever in our hearts and minds. That's almost seems like elegiac, you know, like a final statement about, oh, it'll live forever in our hearts.
Yeah, I've seen that clip as well.
It lasted
amusing.
60 years. It'll continue. You know, it's like, but there was a gap.
Yeah.
I think right now everybody's having to be very careful with what they're saying. I think it's we usually have a go at Russell for being over, like everything's brilliant and positive and it's the bestest thing ever and it's the biggest thing. So now, actually, at least for the moment, a lot of that language has stopped, and I think that's actually shows a bit of growth if I'm being honest, that actually we're getting straighter talk, it feels like, at the moment. They're being more, no, you've got series 2, you've got the spin-off, we cannot comment beyond that. And I think that's sort of where we have to sort of just wait now for this. And it feels like a long time because we're Doctor Who fans. But actually, in the long run, if this is going out in April as what sort of that date, even though I don't know if it's been officially confirmed yet. I know a writer's come out and said April. But if that's true, we've only got a couple of months and then we will know. And I think the language then will become a lot more certain. I think they're having just to sort of bite their tongue a bit, is the impression I'm getting, everybody involved right now.
Yeah.
And we just have to wait for that second series.
Lee Smith says the Doctor Who crew have spoken. Easy to fact check. That's the bit that I know is erroneous in that respect. It's just not. It's simply not true. The Zero Room has joined us too in the live chat. That Mirror article shows the BBC are dancing around the facts. Dancing around them. Again, I think it's more of the same. I think it's PR. Stephen Braddock's here as well. Our friend Stephen Braddock in the live chat on YouTube, who says it's quite unbelievable that we're looking at the show ending, and yet there are more episodes and a spin-off we haven't seen yet. But Shooty and Russell T Davies are leaving a sinking ship on the surface. That's you can see how that would appear.
All I would say,
Dan, I don't think Russell T Davies is going anywhere anytime soon. I think he's involved, if not on a day-to-day basis, he's still present. And Vanessa Law as well, our friend Vanessa says they've been teasing the demise of the show for years, but I'll believe it when I see it. And going back to the Sun, Credswell Roll again there says, a lot of comments from Credswell Roll. It's quite disgruntled, says the Sun article was extremely unprofessional. And I think it was unprofessional. I just think it was trashy. Trashy with a small t. Extremely unprofessional and clearly written by someone angry about the inclusivity. What a sad thing to be angry about. Oh, I didn't pick up on that at all. In fact, they went out of their way to say the opposite. I don't. That's true at all.
Yeah, I think they just picked up on facts that have been talked about. I think. I didn't pick anything up in it particularly. Can I also just say that if this does come to fruition, I really hope there is a regeneration scene, because if there is another Wilderness Years coming, I don't want years of Shooty on the covers of every piece of merchandise. I would not be able to cope with it.
A quick reminder here. Yes, we've got Ron Sapp in the live chat who says, so has Russell T Davies responded? No, he hasn't. We do have this quote from Russell T Davies, though, which I wanted to look at again, because this, just as you said, Charlotte, Russell T Davies, when things are going great or when there's something to be sort of hopeful about, Russell T Davies is a great person to have in your corner because he talks everything up and he does the sort of the ringmaster thing. And when everybody's kind of unified and included in something, when we're not sections of the audience are told to piss off or that it's not for us or to touch grass, when they're not doing that and everybody's being brought together in front of the screen, it's brilliant. And him being that way and being a little bit over the top, it's actually quite endearing. But when we are being given what for, we are being lectured to, we are having fingers wagged in our directions, and they're taking license fees as well for the privilege, that then all that kind of behavior, I don't know, it just gets on your tits. Russell T Davies has only really commented about the entire thing once in any kind of reasonable way. He stopped to say this was after season 1 had aired, and he claimed it's simpler. So the reinvention of the series last year, he said it's simpler and younger, and it is working. Oh, 2 out of those things are true. It's simpler and younger, and it is working. The under 16s and the 16 to 34 audience as well, for them, it's massive, he claims. I'm not seeing any evidence of that myself, I have to say, but that's his claim. He did admit, though, it's not doing that well in the ratings. It's not that is mean, that's a hell of an admission for a man like Russell T Davies. It's not doing that well in the ratings, but it is doing phenomenally well with the young audience that we wanted.
I'm pretty sure Disney didn't.
Yeah.
Measured how?
Never watched with me. It's never watched with me. I mean, it is true that Doctor Who is on the BBC, on the iPlayer, at all BBC services combined. Doctor Who is the most watched drama for under 35s. That's unequivocal. All the metrics all show that's true. And Doctor Who is still the BBC's most profitable series globally, brand, if you like. Which obviously means that they won't be looking to end it or even to pause it unless they absolutely have to, unless they've no other option. But it was also, however popular they're claiming it is now, with whoever they're denoting, back in 2009, 2010, it was considerably more popular, but they had no problem considering to end it then. So I know it was a different time then, and the nature of intellectual property was different then. But I think it's knowing when to fold them, as they say. I'm not convinced the BBC knows how to play a smart game.
He doesn't know how to play.
They've never understood what they've got with Doctor Who, and Doctor Who does have some enemies within the BBC. I've got several quotes with names attached to them, which I can't broadcast. That would blow your minds. Thank you everybody for the comments so far. We do have more Russell T Davies leaving the sinking ship. Can we buy the Sun? Can we buy the Sun cover on a t-shirt? It's not made the front cover, I don't think. Domgo says the truth is the show is dive bombing. I don't think it hasn't dive bombed. That if anything, that would be more exciting. I think it's just there. This is the sad thing about Doctor Who, and I think Matt, you've summed it up perfectly. There's just nothing. If it was dive bombing, there'd be something, I don't know, to get excited about or to be really furiously angry about. It's just sort of there. Nobody really cares whether it's there or not. I'm not convinced the general public. Well, I don't know. I did speak to members of the general public when they were putting it on New Year during the Whittaker era, and a proportion of them missed it on Christmas Day. Whether they'll miss it now they've had it back for a couple of Christmases, I don't know, Gary. It's hard to say, isn't it? Results are really going to vary on that one.
Well, I mean, we had 3 years on New Year's, right? So
I know when it was on mainstream media, like when they were covering it, I was extremely embarrassed by it, by what's been going on. Is just the fact that the only reason why it's being covered is because it's so bad and extremely in your face. And I'm still embarrassed by it. I mean, it's come back full circle now, where you're just scared to say I'm a Doctor Who fan. Because the first thing to jump to is this guy in a dress or whatever.
This guy in a dress. That's it there. Lucas Garrett has joined us on YouTube too, and he says that don't expect Russell T Davies to. It's damage control time. He's gone into damage control mode. Yeah, you could be right.
BBC has done too.
Yeah. And they'll tell him to shut up.
They're freaking out. You can't tell me they're not freaking out.
Yeah, and they're probably telling RTD and Shooty to keep their trap shut for now. After what they did last year, they're probably saying, look, we don't need any more bad publicity. Keep it shut. That's it.
Well, this is it. They've still got to do the publicity run, don't they? And after this, do you think that they'll have any questions about, so do you think this will be the final series? And, have you had problems with Russell? They won't go and ask them questions about that.
Puff pieces.
And that's what good journalism is,
Kind of cool says, simply deluded. I don't know whether that's us or them, but it's good to get it out anyway. It's good to get it out. We've got lots more. Keep those comments coming, everybody. Thank you very much for all this interaction. doing well with the audience. Darren Bradley says, doing well with the audience he wanted. That's a good point. Yeah. Was it the right audience?
They're watching.
It's one thing to regenerate the audience, but the idea is that you bring new people and keep the people who were already on board. You know, that's how it should be, shouldn't it? Yeah. Speaking of being on board, thank you everybody who's remained on board for this edition of the show. We do have more. There's more clambering its way to the screen right now. So you've got some new information I wanted to bring you because it is all connected, and some of this is sort of making its way out to the press as well. This is from an upcoming episode of season 2 of Doctor Who.
Now they're ruining cartoons as well.
Yes, we've got some new information from our sources, and this is all, as we understand it, true at this time. It should be treated as rumor and speculation, as if that really needs to be said. But I will repeat what I've said on previous editions of this show and the live stream. We have an impeccable hit rate as regards this kind of material at Type 40. We don't just bring everything that we hear to you here on YouTube, Rumble, and X. We have criteria that we wait to be fulfilled before we talk about something publicly, because we consider it our responsibility to you and to the property as well, to Doctor Who, to report it well, and not to take low hanging fruit. And we would never put anybody's sort of careers or identities at risk. But I want to just to restate for the people who missed it, Disney Studios, Disney Plus, the global streaming partner with Doctor Who on those, how many episodes was it? 26 episodes.
Yeah, 26.
That the BBC talked about there. They are out with the completion of that order. It's as things currently stand. That's it.
Wow.
Disney Plus will not be the global streaming home for Doctor Who moving forward as of this time. Those 26 episodes are
I thought they were going to be filming season 3 very soon. Oh, I've gotten my wires crossed somewhere.
I've got some more about that as well. At the BBC, still intend on continuing with Doctor Who, and are actively looking for another global streaming platform. That's their desirable outcome, so they can maintain a comparable budget on whatever gets made from season 3 onward, with obviously what's gone before. Nobody wants to go backwards, do they? So that is still the case. As of this time, Disney Plus have walked away. They are no longer involved right now. Obviously, that may change. Things change all the time. But as of right now, Disney are not involved. So that leaves what state of urgency the BBC Studios and Bad Wolf are in, who they've spoken to so far, if they've spoken to anybody. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that yet. But
please don't be Amazon.
According to the information we have received from places and people that we trust with a great track record, nobody's ever said anything about 100%, but we have an impeccable track record. That's how we understand it to be right now. So that's the series itself. Looking to the leading man, because a lot of this conversation around this article has centered around Ncuti Gatwa. This is the man who said when he was cast, can you believe it's nearly 3 years since Ncuti Gatwa was cast as the Doctor? He said, I may only have one heart, but I am giving it all to this show. So it's not a massive, not a great big bold statement, but it's quite a touching one, and it kind of matches the identity of the show. And I think we all believed him and wanted that to be true and kind of wanted it to work out, didn't we? But Ncuti Gatwa, who's obviously the subject of a lot of speculation here, since we last spoke on this matter, Ncuti Gatwa was contracted to the series for 3 years of production. Now that's irrespective of how much material is made within those 3 years. The information that we've received as of right now is that the actor has felt it necessary, allegedly, through his agent, he's found it necessary to buy himself free of his remaining commitments to Doctor Who.
Whoa.
Effectively ending his contract with the series and his tenure as the Doctor. It's alleged that there's been a period of negotiation, but the amicable terms for his departure have been met, and that the actor will film material for his regeneration when time allows.
He will soon be regenerating into Jinx Monsoon, so prepare yourselves, everyone.
I have to be as clear as I can. I have to be as clear as I can when it comes to this. So whether he's smiling or not, who's to say? Just like Jodie Whittaker's exit before him, his regeneration will be shot without a successor in place or on set.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Will he bi-generate again?
Let's hope not.
That's going to be a bit awkward if you can't.
This is the most recent information that we have received. Ncuti Gatwa has allegedly grown more and more unhappy with his role on the show, with the culture there, which it's alleged that he's described to other parties as toxic, and he wishes to exit as soon as possible. So yes, there was further time left to run on his contract, but it is alleged that he has bought himself out through his agent of that remaining time and any commitment to play the part further. So how much that would be, I have no idea. I wouldn't like to speculate on that. And obviously this is allegedly.
Can I ask a question, Dan? I was just going to say, you put that text up a few minutes ago, what Ncuti said before when he was cast as a Doctor with one heart. Look, everybody's responsible for their own actions, but I want to put the question to everybody: is there something within this production that turns people to become very negative individuals, or to completely change their characters into a very, very mean-spirited manner? Because, like you say, that those first interviews with him, we were all willing to give him the chance, and it was quite friendly. Yes, there's going to be a publicist or someone putting that out, but certainly it just feels like, look, Ncuti, I'm not a fan of Ncuti at all, but you can look for every partner under the sun. But the main problem you've got is Russell T Davies and his production team in charge. If that doesn't change, then the trajectory of Doctor Who is not going to change. And that's in my opinion, because the evidence has been borne out. And I hope whoever it is has stipulations. And going back to saying about a new streaming partner, you said, Dan, if that is the case, personally for me, I would actually love it to be someone like Apple, because Apple seem to focus on making sure that they put out the best quality possible. And certainly we've seen in the last couple of weeks with all the DEI being thrown in the fire, that's a positive thing as well. But, again, it's time, isn't it? It's how long this is going to be before, we get to the new iteration. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but certainly for the last few years, I've got fed up with the pause. Oh, here's a new season 1. The pause. Here's a new season coming in. Completely new relaunch. It's just it's stop start. And I think if you put all the negativity we've talked about aside, especially if you're trying to generate an audience, especially with kids, the amount of time they go between shows and seasons, that's a massive problem, because kids just move on to the next thing. So,
John, I'm not entirely surprised either that an actor like Ncuti Gatwa coming off the back of Sex Education, having just been in Barbie, which is a big, small role in a big movie. But he's a man who, he's 32, 33. I wouldn't say it's now or never, but it's a particular time in his career. He's been attached to this role for nearly 3 years, despite the fact that he's only played it, that we've only seen like 10 episodes over a far shorter period. In his career, in his life, this role has actually taken up quite a large portion of his existence over the last 3 years. So looking at it from a business point of view, if you look at Ncuti Gatwa as a business, which his agent certainly will, that's not an unreasonable length of time to be attached to one brand. But of course, when you look at the information that we've received, how it's alleged that he's reached this decision, what pushed him this far, obviously that's unfortunate, isn't it? It's been alleged that relations have been increasingly strained throughout practically the entire production process. There was early days, there was I won't say a misunderstanding, but there was an episode whereby Ncuti was appeared on screen smoking and swearing and things like that, and he was seen smoking just off set, dressed as the Doctor. He was videoed, recorded, and broadcast swearing in full costume as the Doctor. All those things. But those are bumps in the road. That was very early days. Apparently, that was all ironed out really quickly. And I know that some outlets have made quite a big deal about that. But as I understand it, that was sorted out. Ncuti really regretted that, and that was all sorted out quite quickly, very early on. But it's more, as I understand it, as it's been explained to me, the real problems where the relations got really strained were more in the day-to-day playing of the part, the schedule, the learning of the lines in particular. Apparently, he found the material very difficult to work with, allegedly. So I've been told. And over a period of time, 2 seasons, okay, it's only 16 episodes and a couple of specials. It's a commitment, but it's not the sort of commitment that we're used to, that we view as ideal from a leading man on this show. I'm not making excuses for the man. I think it's a massive missed opportunity. And I personally, I think he seems like a very vain man. I think he was miscast. And, but do I believe that he could have connected with the role? May connect with the role. We've got quite a lot left to see, possibly. But it would seem that whatever arrangement has been reached has been amicable to the satisfaction of everybody involved. So I'm not suggesting that anybody is storming off and torching the place. As I understand it, it is quite amicable, and that allegedly this has all been thought out and planned out. So again, this is information that we've received from our sources here at Type 40, and it should be treated as rumour and speculation. Judged by our track record, we are pretty impeccable. Charlotte?
Yeah, I think there's been little signs in his interviews of there being possibly...
You saw them before I did.
Yeah. Well, I've had a feeling for a while, and I didn't have anything official. I didn't have a source. I just had a gut feeling, and that's the best way I can describe it about Ncuti for a while. And I just had the way he was being sort of talking in interviews and the way he was being, it felt like to me he was already sort of slowly distancing himself. Whether he was doing that on purpose or not, I don't know, because I don't know the man. But he sort of had this feeling of just, he didn't quite know how to talk and how to be in this role. But the other thing is that there were little hints of, which is when he would talk about some of the early stuff about working with Russell or working in this role, he talked about basically being told no about certain things, about the costume, for example. And that's sort of a point that really stuck in my head. Well,
I was completely on his side with that.
Oh yeah, and so am I, because I think for an actor, you need to allow them to have a degree of freedom to create their roles and to create their characters. Like, you listen to past doctors talk about finding their costume and having ideas about their costumes and how it informed their doctor, and you can see that. And when you hear Ncuti basically saying, yeah, I had this idea, and when he spoke about it, I know you, for example, and a couple of other fans found the fashion pieces he was referring to, and it did look doctor-like. It looked like this sort of old-fashioned mixed with modern, and that seemed to sort of vibe with Ncuti, the way that he's come from a bit of a fashion world before he's done some of his acting stuff. And I just think at certain points, which is why I can understand this alleged sort of miscommunication or sort of not being able to gel so much. If you're being given sort of stopping spots or being blocked as an actor, that's going to make the character harder to get in the head of. And I think the Doctor is a character that actors need to be able to breathe in, need to be able to sort of find their own way and how they want to play the role. And if you've got people above you trying to shape you, which I think personally, off just comments Ncuti has said, that's happened sometimes with this production team. So I can understand fully why he could possibly be wanting to get out. That's sort of my sort of feeling at the moment. We'll have to see, but I can fully understand it.
This news really, actually, as I was listening, Dan, to you explain all this, I kept thinking that really this supports the speculation from earlier in the show that it might have been Ncuti's people behind the Sun article, which we kind of were speculating about.
Would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
I don't think Gatwa can talk his way around an NDA. I think that's been a bit of contention in the fact that he's not sure what he can say and what he can't say, and he can't actually he can't talk about something else, that he is allowed to say,
You're
and
right,
I think, and I think that's been evident in every interview. I mean, my God, it's just been on a loop, the same thing over and over and over again. Like if you saw some of those interviews that he did initially for the Series 1,
I expect
14, whatever you want to say.
I expect, obviously this is information that we've received at Type 40 from multiple sources, and I've stuck to repeating the things that are common throughout the various people that I've spoken to and heard from. There is more, but I think it's wise to stick to the things that everybody is saying, the noises that are making their way through loud and clear. I expect that over the next few weeks and months, more of this will start making its way through the machine, and more people will start talking. Particularly, if what it's believed to be true is true, if people who were working there are feeling disgruntled, then they will start talking about it. I don't think we'll hear anything from Ncuti Gatwa. And I know we're not going to hear anything from Russell T Davies. As regards what he could film and when, no information about that whatsoever. Again, we remind that no Christmas 2025 special was commissioned as part of that Disney Plus deal. There is still a window whereby between now and, say, the early summer, they still do have a window whereby they could film one for a broadcast at Christmas with the other partners involved, budgeted however. That window is still there, but it is closing by the week. And the script does exist for a further Christmas special. It's not in a completed form as I understand it, or it wasn't. It was one that Russell T Davies had initially conceived for Christmas 2024, the one that he dropped off when he assigned Stephen Moffat to that slot. And I believe it's alleged that script, the one that's in a partial state of completion, is the one that was written to incorporate a guest performance from the American actress Whoopi Goldberg. Whether that would be fit for purpose for this purpose to potentially allegedly wrap up the Ncuti Gatwa era, I wouldn't like to say. Obviously, I've not read it. I couldn't possibly say, but I'll leave that for your imaginations.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is that with Gatwa in the role for that Christmas special?
Yeah. Well, I would assume so. I don't know. I mean, it would have been written for him, wouldn't it? It would have been written for him initially.
Well, it would have been written for him, but if he's already filmed an exit.
Well, here's the thing: if it is partially written, like alleged, you could write it for another doctor. I would think, if it's not a full script, obviously, we don't know, but
you can, but you still have the same problem as I said a few minutes ago. You've got Russell T Davies and the production crew there, so even if you swap out to a new doctor, you've still got exactly the same problems. You know, the fact that you were saying there, Dan, about it being Whoopi Goldberg, you only have to see 30 seconds of Whoopi Goldberg these days to see that she is completely insufferable. And,
30.
And and she pushes such a narrative all the time that I shudder to think.
That's right.
I shudder to think what it would be, but this is the trouble now. You know, you need to get fresh people in there, and I can't see that happening, unfortunately.
Domgo says, bring back David Tennant as the real Doctor for Christmas. Are you sure? Is he going to be singing and dancing, Domgo?
Kick him in the knackers.
As long as he wears that same jacket.
Yeah. Oh no, Whoopi is the kiss of death nowadays. Again, this was conceived of quite a long time ago, so things change all the time. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily think that
on the View. Remember, there's cameos
if
involved.
That script is completed, if it would be used, if it was put into production, who knows if Whoopi Goldberg would be free, would be interested. You know, it's now so far out of the rear view, it's best not to fixate too much on that.
Nightmares, kids.
She's the next Doctor.
There is going to be no.
That's what makes him
Christmas
regenerate. He
episode
goes on
as
the View.
Ezra Goldstein.
Have to widen those doors.
Yeah, so that is everything as we understand it in the wake of the Sun's article. Can you call that an article? The Sun's piece from just yesterday, as of time of recording, that has had all of fandom talking. I'm not sure how much the general public care about all of this. Now, I think the general public do care about Doctor Who, Charlotte. I all joking apart, I sincerely think that they do. There's that well of affection there still for the character, for the iconography, for the lore to some extent, and for what it meant to them as children. So how much an article like this will actually travel outside of our circles, I don't know. But it's just when you see those words, as we started at the top of the show with, it's going to set our tongues wagging, isn't it? And the engine's running.
Yeah, I think the general public are going to be very much led by what they see on screen, what official statements get put out from Russell, from the BBC, and these sort of articles. Yeah, the sort of they're bigger in the fan circles because, like you said, it's all. Insider said this or said this, you can't really prove it. Whereas, for example, this is him, Ncuti's agent or Ncuti making a statement that he could possibly be going, that would get the general public interested because it's going to, whenever new actors sort of in the running in some way, people still care about that. And you see it because people talk about who's going to be the next one. That does become a topic of conversation. But on that note, I do need to go. So it's been lovely to chat with you all and to have the chat back and have a good sort of discussion.
Thank you for answering the call, Charlotte, for us and for Ncuti, and for the live chat we've had on this special edition of the podcast. But we'll see when the live stream returns very, very soon. Good night.
Yep. See you guys soon.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so that's over on The Sun. We'll put the link in the description. If you're one of the to Doctor Who fans who hasn't read that and seen the various quotes from the insider there for yourselves. There's a lot to come this year, whether we like it or not. I'm not quite sure really how it's going to play out. I'm not sure what the appetite is like out there for Doctor Who of any kind at the moment, never mind that which stars Ncuti Gatwa as the 15th Doctor. Again, that's the information that we've received. Ncuti Gatwa is for the exit. And the Sun
Don't
piece,
let the door hit you on the way out.
the Sun piece, whilst it may be a little trashy, and I've got my doubts about the origins of some of the things that they're claiming. Generally, some of it does seem to track back. And when enough places are playing the same tune, obviously there's going to be some truth in all of that. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our Fandom Flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
There he is, out, and that's the old girl starting up and calling time on another edition of Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, news but not news edition of the show here in our very overlit and quite busy and very spacey console room. Everybody, thank you for this. It scratched an itch, John. Have you said what you feel needed to be said? Was there anything left in the tank?
I feel purged, mate. I really do. I feel like
TMI, John.
You don't want to do any purging. I was going to say you need to up your prescription, mate. Yes, thank you for joining us and joining in. What's happening next? More Doctor Who talk, of course, here on Type 40. There's lots more coming up on our dedicated home feed for the podcast. That's at type40.podbean.com. Catch us on the podcatcher of your choice. If it's Apple, Amazon, Spotify, iHeart Music, Google, Podbay, all those places, we're everywhere you find your podcasts. We're also in front of your eyes some more here on YouTube and on Rumble on the Type 40 channel with extended video editions of each and every show, exclusive extra Type 40s, and our live stream magazine show, Type 40 Live, completely raw, completely live, where anything can happen, anything can be said, and often is. So get all of that on Type 40 on YouTube and on Rumble too. We're still on the fabulous Fandom Podcast Network's master feed, loaded up with all those treats for your ears. Never mind on the weekly, it's coming at you on the daily. Please consider a trip sideways in time for more quality shows from the FPN. And if you'd like to have your say about all of this, you know precisely where to go. Of course you do. There's our social media. That's Instagram and X at Type40 Doctor Who, as always. Or you can email us Type40 Doctor Who at outlook.com. Get what's left out of your tank out, if you can, over on the wall of the Type40 Facebook group too. Join the discussion, the never-ending debates on the classic series, the new series, and the all-new incarnation of Doctor Who. Going well, isn't it? Bloody hell. So yes, they're getting stuck into all of that. Heaven knows what you're walking on if you join the Type40 Facebook group. So knock yourselves out there and have fun on the wall. Let's look and see what other comments we've got here before we wrap up. Yeah, bring back David Tennant, says Domgo. Bring back David Tennant. My God. Problem Being says, I'm going to call it like I've been calling it for months. It's done. You think it's just lock, stock, done. They intend on it not being done. I have to stress this. There are some who say that I'm saying that Doctor Who has been cancelled. Doctor Who hasn't been cancelled. They want it to continue. They're looking for it to continue. The BBC want to, as I understand it, the BBC have commissioned season 3. That's the information that I've received. But they really want that global streaming partner. You think if you've spent 2 years speaking about how you've stepped onto an international stage and you've got this and you've got that, and then the next time you do it, you haven't got that anymore, you're going to lose a lot of face if they haven't got that. So, as I understand it, they do intend on continuing with Doctor Who, not with Ncuti Gatwa, obviously, if the man doesn't want to do it anymore. But Russell T Davies, as I understand it, is still, as of this time, still involved. We've got Babette Bombshell there saying Whoopi Goldberg actively campaigned to play Doctor Who in the late 80s. I campaigned. Whoopi expressed a fondness for the character. Come on, Babette, let's not overdo it. I wouldn't say actively campaigned, but yeah, she did say she'd love to do it and things like that. But a lot of actors have said that over the years. I think
one point, if this plays out, Dan, exactly as you've reported, then Ncuti will be the first multi-season Doctor never to have faced the Daleks.
Yeah, good point.
Thank God.
God, if there are no Daleks in season 2, that will be such a massive dropped bollock. Dear God,
working up against its casing. You know, you can see it now, can't you? Really?
All right. Thanks for putting that picture, Jim.
Stephen Braddock suggests that the general public, I think he's talking about, they do care and they would come back if Doctor Who went back to being Doctor Who. I'm inclined to agree. I think there's only so many lives we've got. There's only so much patience that the general public have, and they're going to want it served to them in the way, in the format, and in the places, the platforms that make it easiest for them to consume it. I don't think Russell Badwolf, I don't think they were off base with what they've attempted to do. It's just they've fumbled the ball in a pretty big way, haven't they? They've got it wrong because they don't really understand. Russell T Davies is yesterday's man, and he may talk about streaming platforms and modern audiences, and social media, in fact, but he doesn't understand any of those things, in my opinion.
And the other thing also now is we're in a very, very different time where money men within Hollywood and those institutions, the time is gone where they just give you money with no conditions on it whatsoever. So you don't get a free hand anymore. They literally will be scrutinizing you every step of the way, what you're doing. And if they're not happy with it, that's it. They will be ruthless with it. I mean, going back to Disney, Disney don't want to change course. It's the money men that are making them change course at the moment. That's where we are. So I think if he is still on RTD, he's going to have a lot more people telling him, no, cut that, chop that. And I hope that's the case, because that's the only way you can salvage it.
Yeah. There's lots of good nights and goodbyes to our Charlotte there. Tell it like it is, Matt, says Problem Being.
Yeah.
Tell it like it is.
Yeah, put him out the door.
We've been joined by lots more people throughout the this live edition of the Type 40 podcast. Thank you to everybody who I've mentioned, and the people that I haven't mentioned. We've had a lot of activity, a lot of comments, and some of it very creative, some of it explosive. I think there's been a few arguments broken out as well, but that's Doctor Who fandom for you, isn't it? Thank you, as always, to our moderators here on the Type 40 YouTube channel. We really, really appreciate everything that you do. Stephen Braddock says, well, for the very first time since 1968, I will intentionally not be watching this season of Doctor Who. I'll be watching classic Doctor Who instead. That's sad to read. But everybody's got their limits, John.
Yep. Yeah, he's where I was a while ago, and you can't blame him. I mean, but this is the thing about loyal Doctor Who fans. You really have to push them quite far for them to make those decisions. I mean, for me, and I'm sure he would be the same. Could you have said 10 years ago that you would be going, I'm not going to watch a Doctor Who episode? No. I mean, I'd laugh at myself if I traveled back and had that conversation. It's crazy, but here we are.
Kind of cool suggests, in fact, to sack Russell T Davies, Phil Collinson, Julie Gardner, Jane Tran. A great man once suggested this, and how he scoffed at the somewhat grumpy northern actor. But you do wonder, when enough people, and this is allegedly, obviously, when enough talent from working under a collection of people speak of a toxic culture, how many times do we have to hear a version of the same story before we start to believe them, for all the signs point back in one direction? So, and I say that, I don't say that with any relish whatsoever. I love the Russell T Davies era, and there are a couple of episodes of the last season that I really enjoyed, but that is something that I view very separately from everything else that's going on. I watch Doctor Who. I think a lot of people watch Doctor Who slightly differently, and I watch Doctor Who very much at face value. That's why, when it breaks its spell, that's why I get so affronted by it, by stuff like The Timeless Children or Empire of Death. When something's really bad, I'll forgive it. I'll forgive it a lot, and I will give a lot of actors sort of more chances than perhaps I should. But yeah, I did. I enjoyed some of what was done last year.
You left out, Dan, just now, the worst offender of all, which was Rogue.
Well, yeah. To be honest, I can't.
He's tried to screen it out.
I can't even bear to think about that episode.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly as bad as anything that was broadcast in the Whittaker era. Probably worse than a large chunk of it as well. That's a hard thing to process. A hard thing to process. LMAO, says Lord Thoth. LMAO. It's easy for you to say.
Laugh my arsehole.
Oh, Matt, where's it all going to end? Where's it all going to end? Oh, mentioning Whoopi Goldberg has got them chomping in the live chat. She's not a popular woman. And again, she's an ideologue. And she lines up with their values, I suppose. But the idea of seeing her on the publicity circuit for Doctor Who fills me with dread. You think, how much worse can it get? Well, I don't think we're going to have to worry.
Don't say that.
Star Whovian, and this is a good point, I think, to finish on. Star Whovian reminds us there on YouTube, the total silence from Ncuti Gatwa since season 1 aired is deafening and telling. I just put that down to an actor, Matt, who I've never been convinced that Ncuti Gatwa is as popular as Russell T Davies tried to sell him as being, or as portions of the Who fan base would have you believe, or the sex education crowd. I think he's got a fan base. I understand his appeal, and it's not that I don't think he's talented, but I don't think
just
he's
in the wrong area. Give up. No more.
But I don't think he's a megastar. I don't think he's this enormous movie star that we're lucky to have. I think
he's a Dame Edna average.
Dame Edna average. He's only a slightly better than average actor, but who's got a considerable amount of star quality and who landed, who hit the jackpot when he landed the role of Doctor Who. I think now that Starhovian has mentioned it, though, I think he has been quieter than we're used to actors being. I'd initially hoped that was because he'd perhaps seen, John, how in the last few years, several key performers attached to TV shows and big movies have tanked those productions so quickly with a few
Rachel Zegler.
a few poorly chosen words or lapses maybe in their judgment between how much of their own personality or politics to reveal to the public. But it could be just the same as Starhovian is saying, that he's just not dialed in, wasn't feeling it, and it's just a day job to him. He was easy enough to take off as the skirt was.
I think that whoever is representing him has probably sat him down and said, look, keep your gob shut. If you want to work in Hollywood, especially the way things are changing, you keep your gob shut, because you've only got to look. I said there, I joked Rachel Zegler, but what she's done with that movie, Snow White, it's doomed to fail before it even comes out. And there's now talk that she's been pulled from other movies because, there gets to a point, even in Hollywood, where people go, no, you're too toxic to work with.
I think Gatwell will wear those dresses whether he gets paid or not, though.
Yeah.
You could be right.
Well, he can take them with him. Don't want them in the TARDIS.
Well, they should just pull the new Snow White movie, refilm it with Shooty in the role.
Stranger things have happened, Gary.
Yeah,
we're not that far away. I don't think we're that far away at all.
Just money.
John Richards stopped watching when Bill Potts got involved. Oh, she was a great character. I love Bill.
No,
I really miss her.
Gave me the shit.
There was
my name as well.
Was it all that hair, Matt? Was it
a lot of great stories in that season, though, John?
Yeah, some great stories in that season. Definitely, it's just,
Did you hear the rumor about Bill Potts?
I heard the rumor. Yeah.
Really? Let me guess.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
I know.
Hi guys. Hi Bax. Good to see you in the live chat. Lots of new names there, some of which I can read out and some of which I can't. Obviously, thank you anyway. And we've got the Peter Venton fan site also in. We've got Darren Bradley as well. We've seen Darren, haven't we? We've got Dalek Lives Matter in the live chat. He's complaining too, but we'll have to come back to that another day. In fact, we did a whole live stream about the War Games in colour, and we were all up late, weren't we? There's several of us were doing that. Yeah. And Will Hadcroft there, the writer, fabulous writer and friend of the show, Will Hadcroft, has joined us there. He's just noticed that we're on just in time for us to bugger off out of it again. So, yes, this has been a special edition of the Type 40 podcast here on YouTube, Rumble, and on X across the podcatchers of your choice too. You can get some more of it in your life if you head over to type40.podbean.com. It's up past, present, and future editions of the show as ever. And you can catch us on social media too. Thanks, as always, to Charlotte Shields there, who had to pop off. She had to disappear in a time edited, just like the first Doctor went slightly before the end of the third Doctor. But you can't have everything, can you? Oh yes, and people outpouring love here in Ncuti Gatwa's direction.
You can feel the love.
After the information that we've disclosed on this edition of the show, this is what we know, but there is more. You're not going to want to miss that when Type 40 Live returns to YouTube, Rumble, and X very, very soon. Matt, John, Gary, thank you for making up this roundtable edition of the show and helping unpack quite a lot from so little.
Historic day.
Well, we are journalists, Dan, so we really need to. We really need to do our investigations properly. So I'm going
to go and do some investigating in a moment.
Yeah.
Sure. What investigating?
Next stone unturned.
Yes.
A stiff drink. Yes, so thank you everybody for your time and your company, and to you out there for the comments as well, as we've been talking about this and going through it all in real time in front of a live chat. Thank you everybody. Lots more comments as well, but that is all we have time for. We always have the time though, if you have the space here at Type 40. You take care of yourselves, and don't cry too hard. Don't cry too hard. We'll speak to you all again soon. Bye bye.
See ya.
Bye, Shooty.